Hi everyone, my name is Joseph Vizcaya. I'm a part of the CyberGRC product management team. I've been working with MetricStream for the last 7, almost 8 years, and I will be covering continuous control monitoring today. Okay, let's do a more friendly session. I'm more than flexible to take your questions whenever you would like them. We don't need to wait to the end. So let's move. You probably saw this slide already about connected GRC. We have 3 main product streamlines. The one that we are going to focus today is going to be CyberGRC, where our biggest focus in CyberGRC is mainly IT cyber policies, IT cyber compliance, cyber risk, threats and vulnerabilities, third-party risk management, and also issue remediations. The session that we will cover today will be more around continuous control monitoring. That has their own benefits to the business, of course. But let's look at an overview. So what are actually a continuous control monitoring solution? So continuous control monitoring solutions allows the organization to automate control testing. You don't need to do a manual assessment in order to get the evidences. If your business or your assets are totally digitalized and sitting on a cloud environment, we can easily bring that information into MetricStream and you can easily monitor your controls. Okay? So it brings such as control monitoring, evidence gathering, assess risks on the entire population, and the end-to-end control testing. Okay? What are the main business values here? So if you look at the core 4 business values and the benefits for our business, the first one is increase efficiency. So we can complete automate control testing against manual control testing. Increase visibility, real-time view of the compliance status and track evidence trail. We also have increased accuracy, so basically allows all the information that is available to be available daily for the end users, and also better resource management. We will end that era of not knowing who needs to fix what. If it's a cloud issue, automatically can get assigned to the correct owner. So how does CCM work in MetricStream? We have 3 simple steps. The first step is the plugin. We have the entire module ready for you to enter your credentials on AWS, for example. We are extending this framework to allow not only the AWS, but also Continue, Google Cloud, Azure, and even Jira software. Okay? Once you plug in all your credentials, all of the information that sits on the main system will get pushed into MetricStream. Controls, relationships with requirements, with regulations, all of that will get pushed into MetricStream. And then the last part will be the analytics, looking at the key reports, key dashboards to understand your compliance status. I'm not going to waste more time on slides. I'm actually going to go to the demonstration. I think you all want to see that. So I will jump to the system and please ask any questions, okay? More than free. If it's even not related to CCM, you got me for the next 25 minutes. So please enjoy. So let me just move here to my application. The continuous control monitoring, it's all about, one second. It's all about identifying the key applications that we want to connect. In this case, I'm going to focus on AWS and on AWS only, okay? So in this example, I have created a connector with CCM for AWS. And I automatically have 277 controls identified that are created and managed on AWS side. So if we want to understand these controls, we can see that a lot of them are related to multi-factor authentication, API management, so on and so forth. Automatically, once you connect, you have a new control sets in your library, okay? These control sets will get scanned on AWS side against all of your digital assets. So in this case, we have 235 digital assets that if we want to understand, we can see our API gateways, our S3 buckets, our instances, so on and so forth. So once this registration is done, all our dashboards will come to life. So daily, we will get information about our controls in AWS, and we can see the severity and we can see the compliance status of these controls. To understand all of this information, we just need to, for example, drill down into the entire control sets. We can understand all of the controls we can put our mouse over, we can have more context to these controls. So it's a new control in the system. I can just go to my main form and add the context of my business. Adding or changing descriptions, we can add or change relationships, and it's going to be here that we are going to leverage AWS controls to mitigate our risks. But now let's understand a little bit how the compliance status actually works. So imagine you have a multi-factor authentication control, and that multi-factor authentication control is going to scan all of the instances and S3 buckets that you need to have multi-factor authentication turned on. So if we want to understand all the environment, we can just go inside of all the assets that are being scanned, and we can understand if they failed or passed this specific scan. So this would mean, in this example, that I'm looking at a IAM policy check, I can identify that all of these resources sitting in AWS are failing to have an IAM policy published. But I have one or two assets that are already compliant. So the next step in this journey of CCM is a quick download of the evidence. So we can download the evidences of these results, and we can store them as an evidence related to one or more controls in the system. Every time you have these failed checks, AWS gives you also as well the path to fix these problems. And what we are bringing into MetricStream is the one click and fix the problem. We don't need to wait for an issue to come. If there's a problem with a specific resource, we can just go ahead and fix that problem. For example, multi-factor authentication again. If you don't have multi-factor authentication in the specific instance, you can either go to AWS and change that configuration, or you can just do one click in MetricStream that runs a script that automatically enables multi-factor authentication for that specific selected resource. Okay? This is what we've been building for AWS. The topic is continuous control monitoring, but we are foreseeing the future. So we want to take a next step, and the next step is no longer continuous control monitoring, but is a continuous GRC monitoring. Now imagine the case of bringing in all the rules from Azure, AWS, or any other external system, and be able to map all of that information back to your core requirements, core controls, core regulations, core organizations, so on and so forth. So you move from a continuous control monitoring to a continuous GRC monitoring. Is there any questions at this point? Tell me.
Just for understanding, and these controls, do they automatically tie to the firewalls, for example, or how it's set up that we have different products on the market, and just they're like general controls, tailored to the specific.
Okay, so every system that you have connected will bring their own controls, right? So in this case, we have multi-factor authentication from AWS. Once you connect Azure, Azure will come with their own AWS or multi-factor authentication control. Once you connect with Google Cloud, they will bring in all their own multi-factor authentication control. The beauty of this is once you step out of the control area and you move more to a rules that allows you to map rules against any control, in your system, you might only have one multi-factor authentication control, so you can build an harmonized view of your controls. And against this one single control, you map all the rules you have. Rules from AWS, rules from Azure, rules from Google Cloud. And basically, you're monitoring a control by looking at all the KCIs of that control. Make sense? I'm open to more questions. I don't want to drag this anymore. I showed you exactly what we had to show. Tell me.
I have a question. Is there an ability to write a control writer?
Not in MetricStream. You need to go to config rule in AWS specifically, create their rule. Once you have created a new rule, the next scan is going to import that rule into MetricStream.
So this is more like an aggregation of existing control.
Correct.
In other systems.
Correct.
And this is
Correct. So it's basically, and I can even show you AWS itself so you can understand what's coming from AWS sites, right? So you saw what we have in MetricStream. Now let me show you what we are bringing in from AWS specifically, okay? So I'm just going to log in here. I'm going to go to my Security Hub. So Security Hub is the AWS application where we are going to get all of this information. Security Hub focuses in 3 standards. 2 of them are AWS specific, so their guidelines and their frameworks, and then we have PCI. Okay, so we have AWS Foundation Security Practices, CIS, AWS Foundation, and we have PCI. All of these 3 frameworks are the ones that we bring into MetricStream automatically. Once you connect with your credentials, all of these frameworks and all of the underlying controls are the ones that get pushed into MetricStream. And then to monitor this daily activity that AWS provides us, we push all of this information back to MetricStream, because these controls might be needed to mitigate risks, to be included in audits, or even to be conducted manually from any user. Imagine, I received a failed control because it scans AWS environment, but that doesn't stop me to actually go into the control and do a manual assessment and collect my own evidences and my own samples, right? So this is the flexibility that we built on our side. And all of this information, like you saw, has all of the compliance status, the severities, etc. And once you go inside of that particular control, you're going to be able to see that you can do an investigation or you can download the evidence directly. So all of these additional functionalities that you can do in AWS, that's what we are creating on MetricStream, so you can manage entirely AWS on MetricStream side. Okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Perfect. Any more questions? 15 minutes, and I covered CCM. Yeah? I'm more than free to take any more questions if you like. If you want to take the next step and see how this information can be used in risk management, I'm more than happy to cover that. Tell me.
No, just the first that again.
Sure. Sorry?
The first
Sure.
Take a picture of it.
This one? Okay. Let me put this one bigger.
All the slides as well.
No problem.
You mentioned like moving towards like automation.
Mm-hmm.
Could you expand a bit more on that? Like, what specifically I'm interested in? I think this is like great that we can do it for specifically for like cyber controls. Obviously, like a company may have like automated controls, and are you going to expand this automated control?
Yes. So we are. Let me
How
go.
would that work?
Yeah. So let me go here to this slide. So AWS focuses on your active assets, digital assets. If you look at Continue, it's another provider. Continue allows us to connect with Office 365, SAP systems, any database in reality. So it's the same approach. You build the rules on Continue, we download those rules, and we show you the results of that information. So if you depend on a finance system, Continue is the system that escalates beyond cyber. So it goes to SOX, financial controls, and it goes to more operation controls and gets that information for you.
That's similar for GRC.
Yes, so Jira is more for evidence collection and ticketing as well. Tell me. We are exploring that possibility, yes. We finalized the foundation of the framework that allows us to not be restricted to one provider. We want to actually build a framework that any input that comes, we will define what we want to do with that. So that's the underlying framework we've built. So currently it's these providers that we are working on. AWS is fully done, and the other ones are almost done. And Continue is done as well. Okay? Any more questions? Tell me.
Regarding the controls,
Yes, it does. You want me to touch that? Diga? Sorry?
known vulnerabilities
Yeah.
are which can be for you.
So we can scan, we can receive information from scanners, QualisGuard, Nessus, Tenable, and we build a rule foundation. So let me show you. going to log in with a IT risk manager. Okay, this user has access to the threats and vulnerabilities, right? So if you look at vulnerabilities, you have unassigned vulnerabilities. You identify the vulnerability, but no one is fixing it. And you have remediated issues. It means that 99 vulnerabilities were identified, and you automatically assign an issue to the owner. So how does all of this work, right? So on the setup of the application, you can build all the rules you like for threats and vulnerabilities. So if you look at the types of things you can parameterize, the first thing is, let's define all of the types of SLAs and all of the response times that we need to have in place. So let's configure our ticketing methodology, right? You have three possibilities. Or you take care of those tickets in metric stream, and you build your own templates. Who's going to do what and what type of vulnerability? Or you can actually create your templates for the remedy ticketing solution, or even for ServiceNow ticketing solution. This is very simple to configure. If we look at here to our rules, for example, this one day SLA. What I've done here was basically I've identified a type of vulnerability. I said who's going to fix this vulnerability, the specific owner, the type of issue that is going to be marked, and also what's going to be the name of my issue when it automatically identifies. So in this case, it's going to be vulnerability title, the source, and the asset name. So the name itself can give me all the information I need. Next is actually building the rules. So imagine that you have, I'm going to give a real case scenario. Imagine that the starting of the war, right, between Ukraine and Russia. You have a data center in Ukraine, and you want to build some kind of rule that says whenever there's a brute force attack, and I want to identify those vulnerabilities, I want to receive a one-day issue so I can fix it, right? So to set up all of those, you just need to come again to the specific part, so remediation rules, and in here is where you're going to define the rules for the scanners that you have in-house. So we have Nessus, QualisGuard, and Tenable as well. So in here, we go and, for example, create a new rule. Creating a new rule. Right. Creating a new rule, I'm going to give it a name, and what's my condition. Building the condition is very simple. I can look at my assets and say, okay, so whenever my asset sits in, for example, a physical location equal to, let's say, location 1, and my vulnerability category, it's equal to brute force attack, right? So once I do this specific rule, I'm going to say whenever this rule gets combined, I'm going to give it a risk rating of critical. I'm already identifying this vulnerability as super critical. I'm going to say that the target is my issues, and I can select the template that I want, network, for example, and I would pick the one-day SLA. Okay? So once I start configuring all of this based on my business model, I will start getting all the vulnerabilities assigned to the respective owners. So in this case, if we look at remediation issues, we can go inside and we can actually see that all the issues that are automatically created, the name is coming with those parameters that we set. It's the name of the vulnerability, the title of the vulnerability, and the name of the asset. And it automatically assigns relationships. So the business context, it's already assigned to the vulnerability because it knows the asset, it knows the asset class, and it can be linked to specific regulations as well. Okay? This allows you to save time identifying issues, save time remediating issues, and save time closing vulnerabilities. Sorry?
Automated response.
For vulnerabilities? So that's been provided by the actual scanner. The scanner information sometimes comes with the path to remediate the vulnerability, and that's what we push from the vulnerability. So if you look at the vulnerability information, for example, unassigned vulnerabilities, I can see the vulnerability summary where I'm actually going to see all the details, the description, the consequences, and the solution. No, it's the same. The same. The idea here is cyber needs to provide the questionnaires that the business is going to use to assess the third parties. Any more questions? No? Perfect. Thank you very much for your time.